Hi, and welcome to the beginning of the year LPAC training for the 2020-2021 school year. This presentation has been put together by the GISD Department of English Language Learners. My name is Deanna Pecorino, and I work alongside with Tiffany Gruber. The purpose of this presentation is to meet the Chapter 89, Subchapter BB annual requirement that all districts must establish a Language Proficiency Assessment Committee, or what we call LPAC, to better understand the committee's purpose and our responsibilities. In GISD, we have created a one-page document where we will house the most important documents that the committee will need throughout the school year. At the top of the document, you will have any COVID-19 LPAC processes changes. From there, we move into the initial LPAC process to professional development. Any professional development videos or courses that are created, you will be able to find here. What do we do for our green folders and documentation? Student services enrollment and forms you may need throughout the school year, and the LPAC binder that we are required to keep in the front office throughout the school year, documenting the trainings that were given beginning of the school year and the oaths. Accommodations. Throughout the school year, we will be accommodating for our English learners, and here is where we will find presentations and support for this process. Let's start with the LPAC processes. Initial LPAC and Instructional Conversations. First, let's review our terms. We want to begin by clarifying some vocabulary and terms. An EL, or English learner, is a student who is in the process of acquiring English. The student may be participating in a bilingual or ESL program, or may be a parent denial. EL is the most current accepted term to describe students who have English as a second language. However, it is synonymous with English language learner, ELL, or limited English proficient, LEP, which are slowly being phased out by the state of Texas. An English learner who has met the state's reclassification criteria transitions from an EL, an English proficient. The state requires that we monitor these students for 2 years. During this 2-year window, we say these students are exit monitored. The term EP, or English proficient, is synonymous with non-EL, non-ELL, or non-LEP. Reclassification of an English learner occurs at the end of this school year, once a student meets the state criteria to be classified as English proficient. In very rare cases, the Language Proficiency Assessment Committee may consider reclassifying a struggling English proficient student back to an English learner during his or her 2 school years. Once an English learner meets the criteria to be reclassified as an English proficient student, the parent is notified of the reclassification and given the option to approving or denying their child's exit from the current program, either a bilingual or an ESL program. If the student is a parent denial, the parent is simply notified of the reclassification. LPAC composition. The purpose of this slide is to explain who is required to participate as the LPAC. First, we must have a campus administrator. This can be a campus principal or assistant principal, but must be someone coded under the function 23. It cannot be another staff member serving in a different role but holding an administrator certification. Additionally, we must have a parent of a current English learner participating either in a bilingual or ESL program. This LPAC parent representative cannot be an employee of the district. either directly employed by the district or employed by a third-party company contracted by GISD. Finally, we need to have a teacher representative. Depending on who is being discussed, we need a certified bilingual teacher or certified general ed ESL teacher. If the LPAC is discussing bilingual students, then a certified bilingual teacher must be present. If the LPAC is discussing ESL students, then a certified general ed ESL teacher must be present. If the LPAC is discussing both bilingual and ESL students, you will need both teachers. Within the committee, the LPAC administrator represents all district administrators. The LPAC parent represents the community and all parents. And the LPAC teacher represents all classroom teachers. For compliance LPACs, which are mandated by the state, all three representatives must be present. Others attendings may be invited to attend as necessary. For elementary campuses, you must designate at least one bilingual teacher of record to be the campus bilingual LPAC teacher representative. They must also designate at least one certified general ed ESL teacher of record to be the campus ESL LPAC teacher representative. These teachers must be currently serving as the teacher of record of students, of any student in a program such as bilingual or ESL. They do not need to be the teacher of record of this specific student in the LPAC that you are discussing. It just needs to be either a bilingual teacher or an ESL teacher of record for any student in your campus. Each representative must go through a training to fill their position as their role in the LPAC. This training that you are currently listening to will be the LPAC administrator or the LPAC teacher training. Here you will find LPAC parent training resources. These resources have been established in English, Spanish, and Vietnamese. Let's talk some more about who is required in a LPAC. The LPAC administrator, yes, they are to be trained, and through this training of what the LPAC consists of and what their role is as an administrator of all students. An ESL teacher or bilingual teacher is also needed to represent all ESL or all bilingual teachers serve all students. The LPAC parent is also required, representing all parents or community members, to better understand what the process is for English learners and to give their input from a parent perspective. During COVID-19, the LPAC parent is not mandatory, but is highly recommended. And at this point of the school year, we highly recommend finding several parents that can serve in this role and training them so that you have more options throughout the school year. The compliance LPAC member requirements. The LPAC members are required to receive annual training before being able to sit on an LPAC meeting. The district recommends that campuses train all core content teachers, as well as counselors and special ed facilitators and case managers, so that they can sit on an LPAC meeting as needed. The requirement is fulfilled through this training. As we mentioned already, an administrator representative, parent representative, and a teacher representative must participate in all compliance LPACs, which we'll discuss more in detail in a moment. During the meetings, members are expected to act on behalf of the school district and observe all appropriate laws and district guidelines. Members must also always maintain confidentiality. This is of most importance. Please note the following. All members of the ELLPAC, including parents, shall be acting for the school district and shall observe all laws and rules governing confidentiality and informing concerning individual students. The school district shall be responsible for the orientation and training of all members, including parents of the ELLPAC. All ELLPAC members shall be trained annually. To ensure that we emphasize the importance of student growth in looking at data from the initial ELLPAC to best serve students' needs, the committee members review all data pertinent to a student's language during the meeting to best make decisions to ensure students' linguistic and academic progress is occurring. At the end of the year, the ELLPAC reviews student progress and reclassification criteria to justify reclassification. At the beginning of the year, the ELL department is doing a review student scores to address anything that might have been missed to ensure students are placed in the appropriate program to meet their needs. The state requires that each campus document trainings and oaths of those people that were trained. Each campus is required to maintain an ELLPAC binder. This year, the district will provide these binders. Campuses must include the presentation used to train the staff, but only if it is different from the district or what the district is providing here. Campuses must also include training certificates, rostered of trained members, and confidentiality oaths in their binder. In the past, the ELLPAC meetings and decisions had to be printed and stored in the campus ELLPAC binder as you were completing ELLPACs throughout the school year. However, this is no longer the case, as the state now allows for the electronic storage in systems like our ELLevation program. In addition to the required binder documentation, all individual ELLPAC records must be maintained for 5 years after reclassification. This includes TELPAS writing samples, student history worksheets, and etc. The 5-year period begins at the first year of monitoring of the student. ELLPAC process and year at a glance. The compliance ELLPAC meetings consist of the following ELLPACs. Compliance ELLPAC meetings are meetings that are mandated by the state. Again, these ELLPAC meetings require all 3 representatives, an administrator, a parent, a teacher, to be present at one time. An initial ELLPAC happens when the first 4 calendar weeks, or initial enrollment of the student who are brand new to Texas, for identification and review. Again, these ELLPACs are only for students who are brand new to Texas. This happens only once a student's educational career. An assessment ELLPAC takes place annually prior to state assessment for determination of appropriate assessments and designated supports. These ELLPACs are only for actively participating bilingual or ESL students and must happen as close to the assessment window as possible. An end-of-the-year ELLPAC takes place at the end of each school year for annual review of the following year's placement decisions. The ELLPACs are for all English learners, including parent denials and actively participating bilingual and ESL students, as well as first and second year exit monitor students. As needed, ELLPACs may take place throughout the school year to review students' progress and program participation. The initial ELLPAC placement. To clarify, what students we are addressing in our initial LPAC meeting. Initial LPACs are done for students who are new to Texas, either never been in the school before, coming from another state, or another country. Let me emphasize, coming from another state. Many times we receive students coming from other states who have been identified by that state. However, the state of Texas requires that we start from the identification process for those students as well. The LPAC will review the following information to determine the best placement for this student. We must have the LPAC meeting within the first 4 weeks of student enrollment. We must review initial oral language proficiency assessment given by the Enrollment Center to see what program better suits students' language needs. The Assessment LPAC testing decisions. During Assessment LPACs, we are gathering formative data from the classroom teachers about what appropriate language accommodations this student is consistently using in the classroom. Using ELLevation, follow the previous year's LPAC recommendations to make new recommendations for this year's state assessments. The Assessment LPAC is created for all students that are taking STAR assessments or EOCs. The end of the year LPAC is our annual review of students' progress. This meeting is very important as we are reviewing each student's yearly data to make a linguistic plan for the following school year. The new enrollee IC placement review will be done for not new to Texas students. This is not a compliance LPAC. Let me say that again. The new enrollee IC is not a compliance LPAC. In addition to these state-mandated meetings, there are other times throughout the year when additional discussions may be needed to take place. We call these discussions Instructional Conversations, or ICs. These conversations can be done informally between an LPAC trained administrator and another LPAC member and documented in ELLevation. These instructional conversations do not require the LPAC trained parent to be present. Required instructional conversations include new enrollees and scheduling instructional conversations. These students are not new to Texas. They are coming to us with an LPAC from a previous school district. Our data clerks will be requesting this information through TREX for us to review and ensure the same procedures can be followed in our school district. An additional LPAC and ART. LPAC members shall meet in conjunction with admission review and dismissal, the ART committee members, to review and provide recommendations with regard to the educational needs of English learners who qualify for services under special education programs. ARDs do not trump the LPAC. The idea is that both groups come together to talk about which accommodations and interventions are best for the student to be successful in the classroom and for assessment. These informal meetings result in a plan that is presented to the ART committee by the LPAC representative. Decisions about entry, appropriate linguistic accommodations, and exit are made by the ART committee in conjunction with the LPAC committee. The LPAC train either administrator, ESL bilingual teacher, LPAC lead teacher or counselor, and her teacher of record are the key members. If a student shows language support is no longer needed, a beginning of the year ARD is required to document the process for reclassification. This process needs to be started at the beginning of the year ARD. The documentation that you will find in the ARD is also a part of our GISD LPAC directory under Initial LPACs called ARD and LPAC Documentation for Reclassification. Again, this process must be started at the beginning of the school year by the ARD committee with an LPAC representative to show that the student needs to meet certain criteria created by the ARD committee to meet reclassification at the end of the school year. Student Services Enrollment Process. In GISD, our identification process is directly tied with student services. As students enroll, parents complete a home language survey, showing us what other language the student speaks at home, or what language is most commonly spoken in the home. That home language then triggers for student services to assess the student in English, or if they speak Spanish, in Spanish as well, to identify the student as an English learner. Due to COVID-19, Service Center enrollment was closed and testing was not completed by the start of the 2021 school year as we are regularly accustomed to. However, enrollment and identification has resumed as of August 10, 2020. The English learner testing status update is pre-K students were assessed and identified per the start of the school year. Kindergarten through 12th grade are being language assessed at the current moment. 3-year-old students will be language assessed in the near future. Student Services will contact each campus with updated testing scores to move forward with initial LPACs. We have also created a section in our GISD LPAC directory for more scenarios that you will encounter throughout the school year. By clicking on the enrollment forms, you will find our EL identification process that you just saw, enrollment center flowchart, example of enrollment placement forms, and your campus advisor at Student Services. As you scroll further, you will find different scenarios and whether the LPAC is needed. What documents do you need to send to a parent? Do you need to receive those documents back from the parent? Who do we need to contact in GISD? And the forms you will need to complete this process. As you scroll further down, you will also find more scenarios. And these scenarios are more common to you as a campus for program changes and those parents that would like to request to deny services. At this time, we would take a regular break. So if you would like to take a break and need to return to the training, this would be the best appropriate time to do so. If you would like to continue at a later time, you can also resume here in initial LPAC process. We will continue with the initial LPAC process. In GISD, the identification process is built into two different sections. After the students are assessed, either we move forward with the ELLPAC meeting or that we notice that students are a new or transfer student, not new to Texas. Let's talk deeper about these two different processes. Initial ELLPAC versus instructional conversation. If the student is new to Texas, the campus must schedule an initial ELLPAC. If the student is not new to Texas, the campus must hold a new enrollee instructional conversation. Within 4 calendar weeks of a student's enrollment, you will perform an initial ELLPAC or a new enrollee IC based on whether or not a student is new to Texas or not. If the student is brand new to Texas, or if GISD is the student's first record of school enrollment, you will need to schedule an initial ELLPAC and include an ELLPAC trained parent. If the student is not new to Texas, either they are transferring directly from another school district in Texas, or they are returning to Texas from another state or country, you will need to hold an enrollee IC, in which case no parent is required. For identification of English learners, if the student is new to Texas, parents complete the home language survey. If the parent response to the home language survey shows that they speak a different language other than English, the student shall complete enrollment at the enrollment center to be tested. The ELLPAC reviews the enrollment center recommendation as well as the pre-loss and loss link scores given to the student to determine eligibility as an English learner. The ELLPAC schedules a time within 4 calendar weeks to meet. At ELLPAC meeting, the program recommendation is reviewed. Parent is given the option to approve or deny services. If parent approves, the student continues with current schedule. If parent denies, the counselor is contacted to complete schedule. If placement changes from enrollment center recommendation, you must complete the Google form enrollment center placement in order to make the change of program. Again, the service center, enrollment center, only gives a recommendation to better place the student as far as student counts in each program on each campus. The final recommendation and approval must be done by the ELLPAC. After the ELLPAC reviews the results of the assessment, the ELLPAC recommends participation in a bilingual education or ESL program. If the results indicate that English proficiency is not a required level, then the parent or legal guardian is notified of the child's classification, is notified of the child's placement into the required bilingual education or English as a second language program, shall be provided information describing the bilingual education or ESL program, signs and returns the approval letter to the school. The letter is filed away in the ELLPAC green folder, and Student Services is notified of the date that parent approved the program placement, as this is the date that funding will be initiated for that student. Who is required in an ELLPAC? The ELLPAC administrator, an ESL teacher or bilingual teacher, and an ELLPAC parent. In ELLevation, the documents and testing information that you will need for each one of your students will auto-populate in your main dashboard under Initial ELLPACs Needed. From here, you can also click on Students at the very top, then choose ELLPAC Center. You will be then guided into the ELLPAC Center window. Under Initial LPAC New to Texas, you will have a list of students that are new to Texas. You can click on this first section, click All Students, perform action to schedule your students for their initial LPAC. This can be done without the committee. You will schedule the students for a date when the full LPAC committee will be present to finalize the LPAC. That can be changed along the way. Then you can open the LPAC to start looking at the documentation that will be needed to make the appropriate recommendations for your students. The process for updating years in U.S. schools. In the 1920 GISD students' school year, Skyward Utility Update in November will be created, where the LPAC teacher will still receive validation reports to verify student information is correct before November, before snapshot. But this year, what we would like to do is, based on the years in U.S. schools that was reported to the state during the TELPAS season of the 1920 school year, those years will be put into Skyward, and a new utility will automatically update those years from one year to the next school year. For new enrollees in GISD, this is a new section in your initial LPAC where you will document how many years in U.S. school the student has been. This is what will then be sent into Skyward to keep track from here on of the years in U.S. schools for the student. Our goal is so that at the end of the school year, when we need to find out how many years in U.S. schools students have been here, it'll be a matter of running a report in Skyward. Instructional Conversations and LPAC process. Let's talk more about what an instructional conversation procedure looks like. If a student is not new to Texas, the data clerk requests students' LPAC documents through TREX. We will need original home language survey. GISDs does not count. We will also need original parent permission form with parent's signature and date of program approval. Latest LPAC showing students' program requirements. This is very important because the LPAC has already made a decision for what that student's program and language needs are. So we need to gather the latest LPAC from the previous school district to guide us in what that student needs in GISD. We will also need to collect the latest student history worksheet, and that's not a requirement, but it's very helpful in finding out years in U.S. schools for that student. I highly recommend that we do this at the start of the school year so that you are not caught during TELPAS season trying to backdate and find from other school districts how many years in U.S. schools the student has been here. In ELLevation, we can also request these documents. However, there is only a certain amount of school districts that also use ELLevation. Please use this as your very, very last resort, okay? In order to request a transfer, email Deanna Pecorino and Tiffany Gruber with your student's information. This information can be found in Skyward under Students, TX, NCLB, Other PEIMS documents. We will need their the student's first and last name, the school district that the student is transferring from, our GISD ID number, the student's date of birth, and the testing ID number, which is what the other PIN's ID number is. Under TSDS ID, you will see the full testing ID number that is required in order to request and receive information from another school district through ELLevation. Here is a list of those schools that also use ELLevation. So please, as your last resort, if you are unable to gather these documents through T-Rex, please contact myself or Ms. Gruber to request that information through the ELLevation program. Who needs to be a part of your required instructional conversations or ICs? It's your LPAC administrator and an ESL or bilingual teacher reviewing the prior LPAC from the other school district. A parent is not required for these meetings. If a student has been in a Texas school, the LPAC teacher will review LPAC documents received from a previous Texas school. The LPAC teacher presents LPAC recommendation to the LPAC admin. The LPAC administrator and the ESL or bilingual teacher will meet to complete instructional conversation LPAC documentation received from a previous school district in an instructional conversation in the ELLevation process. This process is new for the 2020-2021 school year. In ELLevation, under your main dashboard, you can click on New Enrollee ICs Needed for 2021. Per your request, this student list will, as you are having the instructional conversations, the students' names will no longer show up under this section. Last school year, you had a running list of all your students, but per your request, you wanted to only see those instructional conversations that you have not had at this point. This is another way of creating your LPAC meetings, and we're going to use instructional conversation as an example. We created an instructional conversation to guide you through the conversations you need to have for each one of your students that is coming from another school district in Texas. So here under student list, you can click on the box that says student name to select all of your students that need an instructional conversation. Then go to edit, schedule and perform your LPACs, and then scroll down and click on instructional conversation meeting. This will then take you to the LPAC window where you'll be able to schedule and open your instructional conversations before having your finalized meeting. Okay, we have given you an LPAC format as that's something that we're familiar with, and will guide you through what questions you will need to answer for those students that have instructional conversations. We have created a separate presentation in ClickSheet to guide you through what you will need for instructional conversations that will be shared with you. Let's move on to the end of the year LPAC process. At the end of the year, the compliance LPAC reviews every English learner being served in a bilingual or ESL program, an English learner with a parent denial, as well as exit monitor students for their first and second year. The LPAC will review oral language proficiency tests, the students' academic proficiency levels as far as grades and classroom tests, English or Spanish reading state assessments, English writing state assessment data, and a subjective teacher evaluation. Once the LPAC reclassifies a student as an English proficient, parents must be notified that the student has met the state criteria for reclassification and then given the opportunity to approve or deny the exit from the program. This process is done through parent letters that are sent out to each parent. Let's talk about parent letters. Which students need parent letters? All students, newly identified students, Monitor 1, Monitor 2 students, English learners, and parent denials. That looks like parent letters for identification. These letters need to be sent home for newly identified students after your initial LPACs. We will need permission to receive services to the student to receive services in order to receive student funding. The parent letter needs to be signed, dated, and returned to the school. Parent letters of students' progress. These are letters that are sent home to notify parents of student progress for the continuing students for the following school year. For students that are currently being served as English learners, parent denials or PDs, Monitor 1 and Monitor 2 students. These letters will not be signed and returned. They're simply sent out to parents to inform them of their program for this school year. Parent letters of reclassification and approval for exit. These letters are sent home to notify parents of students' progress in meeting state reclassification criteria. We'll need parent approval to exit. These letters need to be signed, dated, and returned to the school. Also, students who were previously exited the program, Monitor 1 and Monitor 2 students for student progress only, do not need signed and returned for Monitor 1 or Monitor 2 students. So just when the LPAC meets to say, this student needs to be reclassified, that is the only parent letter that needs to be sent home to a parent and returned back to ensure that the parent understands the student no longer meets the requirements for an English language program. Once a student has met reclassification criteria, what needs to be done? We will have an addendum LPAC to finalize the documentation of reclassification criteria and to note that these expectations have been met. The reclassification approval of exit letter will be sent home to parents and can be printed through ELLevation to notify parents of the state requirement expectations, how the students have met the expectations, and the opportunity to approve or deny this exit recommendation. Parent letter for reclassification, exit approval signed and returned. The letter will need to be signed by a parent and returned before any PEIMS coding can be changed. Check out our GISD LPAC directory 2021 school year for your click sheet on how to print parent letters. This can be found under your initial LPACs, parent letter click sheets. Let's move on to our green folders. The process for updating green folders at the beginning of the school year. For initial LPACs, you will need to create a new folder for the student that will be sent to you from the Student Services Enrollment Center. In there, we will create a student history worksheet to document how many years in U.S. schools the student has been. For those students that are coming to us from an initial LPAC, that means they're new to Texas, we do not have any testing information. So it's as simple as putting the school year, the grades that the student was given during their other location, writing the location, either country or state the student is coming to us from, and simply marking off the rest of that row. Then adding on this school year, the grade level the student is in, the school the student is attending, what assessment was given to the student in student services, either an English Lost Links or a Spanish Lost Links or both, and the LPAC recommendation of the program, either a bilingual, ESL, or general ed program, and the date of the parent's signature. So once the parent letter is returned, the parent letter will be filed away in the green folder. In the student's history worksheet, we will document the date that the parent approved the program placement for this student. For LPAC green folders for returning students, the student history worksheet will need to be updated for any returning students to GISD. So those students that were under the English learners for the 1920 school year, at the start of the 2021 school year, we will need to update all student history worksheets. For instructional conversation, the LPAC green folder needs to have the documentation that was received from the previous school district. The original home language survey, again, the GISD home language survey does not count. The original parent permission form with parent signature and date of program approval, and the latest LPAC showing students' program requirements. The data clerk will also need to check with student services to ensure that the student has the appropriate program that was recommended by the prior school district. Ensure that Skyward has the correct program coding after this has been sent to student services, and then ensure students' instructional and program needs are being met. We will also need to inform parents that the student will continue in an ESL or bilingual services as previously stated in GISD. For this current school year, we will continue to support you throughout the LPAC process. For our secondary LPAC teachers, please click on the following link for meeting dates throughout the school year. You are currently taking your beginning of the year LPAC training, which is virtually self-paced training. For our assessment LPAC, you will also have a virtual self-paced training from January 11th to the 22nd. For our end of the year LPAC, we will also have a virtual self-paced training from April 19th through the 30th. Please mark your calendars for these dates. We will always have a registration in Eduphoria, as well as we hope to continue giving virtual self-paced trainings so that you may take it at your own time, at your own pace, as we know you have many, many things at your campus. To receive full participation of this training, please take a moment to complete the LPAC quiz. Please complete the quiz after reviewing all the information from the beginning of the year LPAC presentation. Click on the Google quiz to take 10 short questions to receive your credits for the beginning of the year LPAC training. Thank you very much for joining us today. The following will be different click sheets that have been created for you to give you a scheduling of the information that was provided in this training. So let's get started with the September to-dos. This too is a document that you may use to guide you through the beginning of the year process of LPAC requirements, from finalizing your instructional conversations, initial LPAC process, to this beginning of the year LPAC administrator training, to moving on to reclassification process and finalizing parent letters. We have given you a timeline, but as you know, please contact the compliance department, either myself, Deanna Pecorino, or Tiffany Gruber, as if we are able to help you with those timelines, and if you need an extension, we are happy to help you through this process, okay? All the links that are in blue and underlined are also hyperlinked to more details about what you will need through that process. Please wait to do your parent letters at the very end of all these steps, because for initial LPACs, you will send your parent letter to get documentation of the parent approval of the program. Then for reclassification, many of your students will be reclassified and their program will change. So we will need those letters back from those parents as well. And then finally, the parent letters that need to go out for the beginning of this school year to inform all parents of the continuing program for their students will be left for the very end. So that way, parents aren't getting changes of their program change. More information is in the parent letter click sheet. We also have a reclassification timeline and a checkoff sheet for you to follow. Start contacting parents of those students who are currently face-to-face, or students that you currently do not have face-to-face that could be tested for reclassification. The ELL department did do most testing and contacted the majority of our parents for GISD the beginning of August. But there were many students that we didn't receive information from the parents, and or parents did not feel comfortable bringing the students up face-to-face testing. At that time, we did talk about virtual testing. However, after hearing about virtual testing complications from other school districts and the Lost Links company, in GISD, we will not be providing that for our students. So if a parent chooses to not bring a virtual student to face-to-face testing, simply document that the student will continue in English learner services throughout the school year. Finalize all addendum LPACs and ELLevation. Obtain parent permission for those ELs who met reclassification. Notify student services of reclassified students to monitor 1 status, and then file parent permission documents in the student's green LPAC folder. The reason why we have given you October 30th deadline, but as you can see, really the finalized date to have a LPAC, addendum LPACs, is October 16th, because all PEIMS coding needs to be submitted in our snapshot date. So all addendum LPACs need to be completed by October 16th so that we can receive parent permission by October 21st to be able to submit the codings into student services to be sent out through Snapshot. For the campus LPAC training to-dos for your initial LPAC process, the new 2021 LPAC binder, it needs to be kept in the front office. The ELL department will send out through inter-campus mail a binder for you to keep in your office and document and fill with your oaths and trainings for this school year. Ensure all teachers know who their English learners are. Please, as the campus LPAC administrator, Your job is to make sure that all teachers know who their English learners are. Recruit parents to serve as an LPAC representative. Again, I highly recommend that you recruit more than just one parent. Provide campus with LPAC training. Now, this is, at this time, you could provide the training to all of your teachers or a select group of teachers on your campus. We highly recommend training all of your teachers, but we do understand there are many requirements at the start of this school year due to COVID-19. So please know that we understand that, but we do recommend that you have more than just one teacher that is trained to be as your LPAC trained teacher. Provide the parent LPAC training. Again, refer to slide 7 for the trainings to help you with your parents. File sign-in sheets of the LPAC training and certificates in your LPAC binder. And then schedule set calendar days for your year as 4-week periods throughout the school year. For our beginning initial LPACs, please note that the 4-week period is very flexible due to when initial testing is completed by student services. We have documented that for the state of Texas to make sure we are falling under the compliance requirements. But due to COVID-19, the 4-week window for initial LPACs is very flexible and fluid at this time. Thank you very, very much for your time. We appreciate you very much. We are always here to support you. Please let either myself, Deanna Pecorino, or Tiffany Gruber know if you need any further support in your compliance expectations. And we will continue to have our office hours to support you through this process, and look forward in talking to you soon.